Why did you become a recording artist?
Ever since I was younger, music has been my passion. It's just something that I knew that there was a purpose that was like so much more bigger than myself that I realized that I needed to pursue. And it felt right. Spiritually, it felt right. I just enjoy it, you know, like.
Remember what age this was, perhaps, or what grade? I know you said young.
When I first started singing, I was 3. Like, I just came out the womb, dancing, singing, that was my thing. But actually recording, the first time I ever recorded, my first EP was with my uncle, he's a producer. And I think I was like, probably about 15 or 16, and that was the first time I ever had like studio experience.
And this was an uncle on your mother's side or father's side?
My mother's side, yeah.
Is he the only musical family member?
No. I have another uncle who's also a producer who's currently working with Fantasia right now too.
And that's also on your mother's side as well?
Yeah, my mom's side. My mom's side is like entertainment. Well, both sides really, but as far as music production, my mom's side.
That genre of R&B, pop, how did you get into that specifically?
I think it's just something that, once again, I grew up around the culture. My mom's Black, so the music in our household is, I'm listening to Anita, I'm listening to Prince, I'm listening to Michael, you know, New Edition, like all the different influences really just curated my style, you know, so that's really where it comes from.
And as far as musical influences, are there any others, or was it just those names that you just provided?
There's a ton. Motown. I know one of my mom's favorite groups is Bone Thugs and Harmony, Floetry, like just growing up listening to soul, neo soul, and old school hip hop, all of that. All those influences just kind of wrapped into one.
Some of these names you mentioned, have you ever had a chance to meet any of these people in real life?
No. I would love to, but some of them are, may they rest in peace, you know?
And for the ones that are still alive currently during this interview, any of these musical influences that you mentioned, is there anybody that you would love to collaborate with if you had the chance?
If I ever had the chance, well, I didn't mention, but one of my favorites, Sade. Yeah, you know, as far as, I love Sade.
What drew you to her?
Sade just has this ability to just, it's like there's no words. She's just, her sound, like sonically, the way she incorporates just different elements, and it's, I don't know what that word is, but it's an experience that you can't get personally from any other artist. So Sade is just, I can, you know, and she's beautiful too, so.
What would that sound like, you and Sade on the same song?
That would sound like magic, baby. That's what that would sound like. I definitely tap into my falsetto with her. And it would have to be, I feel like on this seductive vibe, you know, something for the grown folks, you know, something that becomes timeless for sure.
Something, maybe you have a song perhaps on your hard drive right now for her, or is it something you'd want to cook up and create from scratch?
Cook up. I want to have that vibe created.
When it came to singing, who taught you? How did you learn exactly?
So my dad, he definitely was always singing. I remember some of the first songs that he was singing to me was Brian McKnight. And I just kind of always, you know, as early as I can remember, I was always singing. It wasn't something that I was trained to do. It wasn't something that was forced. I was always walking around, just humming songs and stuff like that.
At this point, when it comes to being a recording artist, safe to say you're a full-time recording artist.
Yes.
And how many years at this point?
A year, now going on second year.
And there was a point during this full time of recording where you actually signed a recording contract.
Yes, I did.
With Epic Records.
Yes.
As far as like chronologically, how soon does this recording contract get offered to you and you sign as you're becoming a full-time recording artist?
So it's been a little over a year as far as when I got signed. I got signed on July 4th. Crazy how that works. It happened, it was a little process. You know, you have to make sure that you take in the extra steps. Being very cautious and you gotta have that laser when you're going through the whole contract. So with the help of my mom and my family and, you know, lawyers and all that jazz, we made it work. But it wasn't that long, you know. I think I was pretty patient with the process. I knew that to make sure that my ass was covered, you know, if this is really gonna work from the jump, from being introduced to the label and then some, that it's gonna be a process. You know, this is a process you have to trust in. So taking your time was one of the big things.
So just to be on the record here, you were a full-time recording artist and then you sign at some point this recording contract, or recording contract comes first and then you become a full-time recording artist?
So initially I was a student that was putting content out, not actual records, but I was putting out content, and then I released the EP on my own. And this is around the time where I was 15, 16 years old, and then introduced to Tricky, and he introduced me to Sylvia Roan, and then the whole process took off. So really I was a student, then I made an EP, and then I ended up getting signed.
And then you become a full-time recording
And then I
artist.
became full-time because I knew, it was a moment where I realized, like, if this is something that I'm as devoted to as I say I am, there's nothing that I want to stand in my way from the kind of success that I'm trying to reach, the level of success that I'm trying to reach.
During this time of being a full-time recording artist, maybe even before then, right? Singing and starting when you were really young, ever felt like quitting?
Nope. No. There's moments where it's really difficult to process certain things that get introduced to me. But I'm someone I'm a warrior, you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things that I have to do the whole self-reflection thing, day in and day out. I've got to check where my headspace is, you know, what my intentions are every single day to make sure that, you know, I'm okay, like I'm balanced. So there's moments where it can be tough, but I don't, you know, there's so much that I've invested, there's so much that people around me have invested that, you know, just the fact that they believe in me, why would I quit? That's not in my vocabulary.
How did you meet Tricky?
So at some point and this kind of goes back into my story, like when I was in college and I was putting out a lot of content, I started putting out a lot of singing content in which, like, a lot of artists, Omarion actually found me first, and he was like, yo, I want to manage you. He was interested, and then there's a few other artists that started to really recognize and repost a lot of the things that I was doing, a lot of covers, whether it be dance covers or whether it be singing covers. And so, like, word around Instagram just became like, oh, she's an artist, like, she sings, she dances. And so he reached out to my mom through his studio manager. And I was telling my mom, I was like, I don't really, like, you think some cat out here really trying to, like, reach out to us? Like, I don't know, like, this is sketchy. And then lo and behold, I'm suddenly taking trips, like, to Atlanta, recording music. And when we met, I was just like, oh, so, like, this is, like, a legit, you're interested, you feel me? Like, you're intrigued, you know? I've caught your attention, and it was something that I was like, okay, bet. Like, you're actually about it. So that's where the relationship began, is through Instagram.
Through a direct message, perhaps?
No. He's commented here and there, but he's very specific. It's like, I'm a observer. You know, I'm gonna move the pieces the way I want to move them when necessary. It's not like, oh, you're the hottest thing, let me jump on that. It was very much like he studied me. You know, he got to see me from a full lens on the outside, and then it was like, all right, now I'm moving in. You know, but at first I didn't believe it. Like, I was just like, yeah, I know who he is. Like, I don't think that's you know how like on Instagram they have fake pages? And I was like, yo, who is this guy? Like, you know what I'm saying? Trying to reach out to my mama, you know what I mean? But it was like him, and he was like very serious. I mean, emails were being sent. I was like, all right, my nigga, yo, like, this is for real.
Now, during this interview segment, did you reference your first song? I can't remember if you mentioned recording your first song in this interview segment. I think you mentioned your first time recording in the studio, but I don't know if you had mentioned your first song.
The first record that I ever recorded.
Do you remember that? Yeah.
Was called Wasted Time. Yes, wow, that was a while ago, but it was Wasted Time. I wrote that record, and that was one of the 4 on my EP that I had released with my uncle initially. So yeah.
What was that song about back then?
I gotta put myself back in that space. I've recorded a lot of music since then. But Wasted Time, I think, let me think, was more so like about petty behavior, you know what I mean? Things that weren't pushing me to where I was trying to go. Like, whether it was people, whether it was conversations, whether it was distractions in general, like just anything that was pulling me away from, you know, it was wasted time. But I think in the actual record, I'm still kind of marrying it with relationships more so. But that's pretty much what that, you know, you're relating to it from an angle of, oh, okay, like, yes, like, my time is wasted. Like, oh, this is my record. You know what I mean?
Were those lyrics honest back then?
Yeah. Every time I've written something, it's from an honest place. It's not going to come from, it's not just going to be words that I pulled out of thin air. This is like when I hear a record and I'm sitting with it and I'm trying to, you know, I put that bitch on the stove and marinate, you know, it has to be honest.
And that song, that's something that people could stream right now if they wanted to, your very first song. That's still available for people to hear somewhere?
If they bought the record. If they bought the record, it's in their possession. But the EP is actually gone now, so yeah.
Now, your first time in a recording studio, do you remember what that setup looked like back then? First recording studio setup?
First recording studio setup. So it was pretty traditional, standard, you know, with the mixing board, with the monitors, with the separation of the vocal booth. Like, I got a full experience, like a full outlook on, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. But I think I really appreciated working with my uncle in that space because it prepped me, little did I know, for what was to come in the future and how to communicate with an engineer, you know, different language like associated with music. So if I need this and I'm, you know, because that's one of the things that I've observed that is real difficult with artists. Like, they don't know how to communicate to the engineers for what they want. So it's like turn at the hi-hat, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, I really appreciated having someone that was able to, like, who has knowledge in order to navigate me through this process.
This was like his home studio or professional studio?
Both, because they look the same, you know what I mean? But he had his own studio, and then we also worked out of a studio.
When you're in the studio, Are you a loner?
Am I a loner? Like, explain a little bit more.
Sometimes people like an entourage in the studio. Sometimes people like to be by themselves in the studio. They describe themselves as a loner.
So I'd say one of my muses. I like to have people in the session. I definitely have rules in my session. I'm a stickler to them, you know, because I always want to make sure that I'm giving the best product at the end of the day. Even though, like, I love to have fun, I like to, you know, do whatever. But I still, like, it has to be, we're on the right frequency, we're on the right vibration as a whole. Whenever you step into an MK experience, you know what I mean, you have to be able in some form to contribute. Whatever form of substance that is, you gotta contribute. So yeah.
Can you share some of these rules?
For sure. So for anybody who's watching, you know, I don't really do the whole smoking in my session. Like I don't want to, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to be doing all that. And then, like, I just don't like when people are, like, mad wasted, you know, like, I understand, like, in a lot, like, especially, like, when you're more on, like, just black music. Like, I'm gonna keep it to you straight. Like, a lot of people, they like to smoke, they like to drink, they have their different vices that they use to help bring out that creative energy, but I don't do any of that. So a lot of my energy is coming from this raw energy. When I step in, I'm coming in completely sober. Like, I want to be able to, like, and I noticed that a lot of people, they start falling asleep. Like, if it's not, that's what I'm saying, like, if it's not contributing to this creative process, if it's not moving us forward, by the time, like, if I don't walk out this studio and we don't have a record done, and it's not necessarily like to get it completed, but it's to know that the intentions that you came here with and whatever you brought with you is so that we can have the best product. So we knocking niggas out left and right, you know what I mean? So, I mean, that it's just a lot of the substance. I don't like to be around it. And when I set the precedent for that, that lets people know that this is the kind of level that I'm coming with when you enter a session with me. You know what I mean? Like, but you can go outside and do your break. You can do all that. But you're not about to puff pass in front of me. You know what I mean? Like, and sometimes I'm a little lenient with that. Like, say I'm collaborating with a writer or something, and you know, and they have that kind of brain that's just, you know what I mean? I might step outside, depends, you know, but typically I'm just like, by golly gee, do you have to do that? You know, so.
Any other rules?
If you're not supposed to be there, don't be there. Like, I've definitely been in a session where A, B, and C was assigned to this session, but A, like an outline, brought room in number 1, 2, and 3, and I'm like, well, who is you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't even write. You over here smoking. My writers, like, you're not even supposed to be smoking. You're not supposed to be smoking. You're not supposed to be writing. You're not even supposed to be here. Like, what are you here for? You feel me? Like, that's how I be feeling.
When it comes to these vices, like you mentioned, drinking, smoking, ever tried it yourself? In the studio? I know you don't. I know you're sober, but sometimes people experiment and then they find out whether it's something they definitely don't want to incorporate or maybe do want to incorporate.
Definitely not. Like, I've definitely had a drink in the studio. On my 21st birthday, I got to share that experience with Hitmaker. I don't know if you're familiar with him. Outstanding producer. And just in that celebration, I decided to do it, but I was done working. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I feel like yes, I like to think I'm a really fun person, and I'm gonna back that shit up. But at the end of the day, I feel like things have a time and a place, and that's one of them. You know what I mean? But that's not something that I'm going to engage. Like, if you were to come with me to the studio and you see all the other artists pulling out things, you're not going to see me engage. You know, it's a time and a place. So that's how I feel about that.
I know you say it's a time and a place, but why more specifically?
I like to remember. I like to know that everything that came from me wasn't something, like, I'm not under the influence to feel. I know that I'm an empath. Like, I'm someone who likes to feel rawness, like completely untouched. I want to, when people get drunk and they're like, yeah, we made that lit record, I want to remember the experience, though. I don't want to be blacked out trying to figure out, like, wow, like, how did we get here? This journey is something that, like I said, when I recognized that I was meant to be here, I didn't want anything distracting me. And those are just the setup for distractions. Like, that ain't what you want. Like, no.
Curious, what did you end up drinking on your 21st birthday?
It was apple, Ciroc, and cranberry juice. And I didn't even finish it. It was that. But yeah, because I think we ended up going back to work, to be honest. But no, that was it. It was like a little clear cup of that.
Was that your actual first time drinking liquor?
No.
Oh, okay.
Mm-mm. Nah, I went to college. I've definitely had experiences, but I'm just not a drinker like that. Like, I'm just not a drink. Definitely not a smoker, but not a drinker. You know, it's like what, once every 9 months. Once every time a baby is born, I'm gonna throw down, like, congratulations to your kid. That's the time. Boom.
You've tried to smoke before?
Nah.
Not even touch it?
Nah, man. Can't do it. Can't
What-
do it.
what's
And
the-
it's gonna mess up my singing voice. I'm not trying to be like, You're like, no, you want to hear this pretty falsetto fly.
Now, I know you're not a loner in the studio. You like people around. I don't know if you said why. I know you described, the muse and things of that nature, but I don't know if you ever explained why you like that.
I love being watched. I love, I'm a performer. I like putting on a show. So that energy, it's like when you're in the audience and you see your favorite artist on stage. And when you're feeding them that energy and you see them maybe bust a move or hit a run or whatever it is, there's something about that collected effervescence that leaves me it's just the adrenaline. I love that. All eyes on me. I love that.
Don't get shy. You don't get nervous.
No,
you don't get...
You always get a little nervous. I think with performing, I get nervous for sure, because that's just expected. But say we're in it, you ask me to dance, I'm gonna dance. It's just something that's in my nature. My parents kind of they definitely I wouldn't even say coached, because it was always something that existed. They just shaped and molded it, made it look pretty, kind of like artist development, you know what I mean?
When you're in the recording studio, top 3 things you need.
Okay, bet. In a studio that I need, not I want. Okay.
Exactly. Necessities.
I definitely have to have water's number 1. Yo, I be back there just terrible. So, and breathing is something that, and still to this day, I'm practicing. As crazy as that sounds, I'm still practicing how to breathe all the time. So it's just water. Sometimes if my nose gets stuffy, any type of I don't know, my vocal coach has the actual specific names of it, but there's certain things that can help, maybe chewing gum that has really strong menthol that can open up my airways. But things that's going to help me sing, or a throat coat. I'll say that would be the last one. That are necessities. Yeah, everything else I'm thinking of is pretty much optional.
Certain type of water?
Favorite water is Aquapana. Love that water. But if I have to settle, then I guess Fiji or Evian. But,
And certain type of gum?
Nah. Airwaves. Yeah, airwaves. That's come on, that's vocal 101. You trying to, yeah, that's it.
Craziest studio story, if you have one.
I do. I do so far. So this is the day that I met Pharrell, right? And I was like, there was a point in time early on where I was like, I'm like, really, like, I feel like, yes, I know that I'm in this position. I've made the decision. I'm fully committed. But there's moments where I'm like, oh shit, like, I'm really doing this right now. Like, that's crazy. Like, I'm on a stage and I'm supposed to sing. Like, that's crazy. Like, you're in my face. Like, hi, Alicia. Like, hi, Pharrell. Like, hi, Teddy Riley. And then you have those moments where you're like, oh, right. And so the moment came where I was supposed to be in a session with 2 writers and a producer. And this is the shit that I'm talking about, that I just, my rules, you feel me? So just keep these in mind, since everybody knows my rules, it's been established. I'm in a session, and I'm like on a vibe, and I'm like, all right, bet, so we're about to, let's walk out here with the magic. Let's walk out here just with the gun loaded. And then 2 writers walk in. And then another set of writers walk in. And so I'm like, okay, so everybody and their mama was invited to the function. Okay. So then more writers walk in. And I'm like, I go out and I'm like, yo, so Trick, like, so who the fuck am I supposed to be working with today? Like, am I supposed to be working with you or am I supposed to be working with you? But are you, like, you know what I mean? So I'm like pressed. And I'm getting upset. And I'm getting pissed. Like, I'm like actually heated. Like, I'm annoyed. I'm like, we've been here. Oh, mind you, more people kept coming as hours were passing. No work is done. I have a few melodies I laid, and then it got to the point where people just started taking turns on the mic. Like, this was a damn freshman XL. Like, we taking turns. And I'm like, okay, so there's nothing done. It's a party at this point. And I'm like, nah, so I'm pressed. But on the flip side, as I walk out, I ran into Tricky. And Tricky says that, oh, there's somebody in the building you might want to meet. And I'm like, oh, okay, brushing it off. I'm pressed. Like, I'm annoyed. I'm not really paying attention. So I go back into session. A good, 3 hours pass, and nothing is getting done. I'm sitting here like, all right, like, you know, just whenever we're going to make a record, I think that's what we do for a living. Like, we're making a record. So I hear my music, a record that I had did with a producer, and literally I hear it in the room, kind of somewhere. I hear it. It's loud as shit. Like, I hear it, and I just was like, okay, somebody's playing my music. Time passes again. Still annoyed, and so I have this feeling. I'm like, okay, and then I hear the record again. I'm like, somebody just keeps playing my song. Like, I'm not really thinking about I'm just like, oh, that's my record. So I'm like, must be Tricky. Like, and I didn't want to be in the session. So I was like, well, let me go. So I went in the session, but I was like, I had a lot of energy. Like, whenever I get upset, I have a lot of energy in my body that has to move, that has to be projected somewhere. So I just I see Tricky, he's grooving, I'm grooving. I'm grooving, I'm doing my thing. And I'm like, whenever I hear, and I get to channel my music, oh, it's like nothing you've ever seen before. Like, the way that I put energy into organized movement is ridiculous. And so, as I'm turning around, I came in, but my back was to the door. Pharrell is by, he's tucked in this little corner, kind of. And I was like, oh, right, and I was like, so I just literally stand up and I give Mans a hug. That was the first time I had ever met him. That's the first time he had ever seen me. This is literally the story. And he had this big ass smile on his face. So it was weird because I was pressed. I was so angry, but at the same time, I was like, I just met one of the craziest. And then he introduced me to his whole team, and he was just so stoked on who I was. So and especially early on, I was trying to still be cognizant of where I was in my journey. So I was like, Kayla, you can't keep getting frustrated with certain music environments not going your way necessarily. But then it was but you just met Pharrell, how are you supposed to feel? So I just had this duality of emotions just battling internally, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and he wants to work with me, and he wants me to meet, this is a great connection, this is a great moment, but at the same time, I will blow this motherfucker up. That's how I was feeling. And so I told Trick, I was like, it's time to go. I just can't right now. And as I'm going out, I just felt this overwhelming, this like all the emotions that were built up just came out. And I'm someone who's like, I believe in catharsis fully. Like, you got to experience every emotion. That's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like if I was high or drunk or something like that, I wouldn't be able to feel that the way that I needed to feel that, the way that the universe wanted me to feel that, so that I could, for any future situations, be able to handle it. You know what I mean? But I just thought that was like one of the most memorable moments so far recording. Yeah, that was it.
So you met him, but you didn't get a chance to collaborate with him yet.
Maybe we did.
But not in that particular studio session.
Not in that session, no.
Okay.
But maybe we did. I don't know. Stay tuned.
But that session, though, for all intents and purposes, that was just a meet and greet, I guess.
Yes, we definitely. He's very much aware of who I am.
Now, what's your recording process like these days? You kind of described a little bit about it, like with the rules and things of that nature, but...
It's like class. It's a session on that ass. Like, so typically, when I'm called into a session, it just depends. One, if I'm collaborating with anyone, or if I'm just vibing out in my own head, like whatever is going on. Usually, and that's why I said it's not a need, it's more of a want, but typically I'll have my phone or my iPad. I can use paper, but I like to see from a visual standpoint what I'm working with, what I want to work with, and then we'll start from there. I'll listen to a record a few times, figure out how I want to approach it, and I just knock it out. But whenever I'm writing, so in my writing process, I usually like to lay melodies first, because I always say I'm the melody king. Like, I always have all these different melodies just coming out at one time. Like, I could make 1 million songs out of like all these. It's just crazy. Like, the melody game is ridiculous. And then from there, I'll think about, where's my headspace? What am I in? And I don't want to force it. When I start feeling like I'm forcing it, I got to walk around. I got to, like, you know what I mean? It has to be an organic process. I think that's the magic in music. Sometimes, like, people don't really give that credit, being organic.
You do write your own lyrics, but you also work with other writers.
Yes, I do.
As well.
Yeah.
And just curious, have you ever had somebody ghostwrite your stuff before?
No. Yes. Technically, no. Yeah, technically no. Like, now that I think about it, ain't no ghost writing. Like, boo. Like, nah.
You had to think about it for a second.
Yeah, because I don't really use that language.
Mm.
You know what I mean? When I'm like, if I'm collaborating with you, then I just collaborated with you. You know what I mean? You ain't.
Some people do hide it, so I was just curious.
I'm both. Like, I'll write my stuff, and if you have something that I feel like should be involved and I fuck with it, like, let's do it. You know what I mean?
But there's always some sort of credit there. There's never somebody that's done it under your name and just been kept hidden.
No.
That would be more so ghostwriting.
Okay.
Somebody writing your lyrics, but they're hidden from the credits, like a ghost.
No.
Because there are ghostwriters out there. And just vice versa, have you ever ghost wrote for somebody before? Have you ever penned lyrics for somebody and it's never been credited on purpose?
No.
You have written for others, though? Other singers? Or no, just yourself?
In my dreams. Sade got a lot of records from me. So did MJ.
When you do record, you're recording inside the mic booth? Outside the mic booth?
That's an interesting question, because this year it's been like wherever the mic leads. You know, typically whenever I'm going in it with a more disciplined eye, like, it's in the booth. But whenever it's more like writing and, you know, free flow, it could be outside. It doesn't matter though. Like, I'm not shy with singing it either or. It's just but I do like to be, like, when I'm actually singing and now it's time for me to cut the record, something about me having the lights low, being able to focus, because for me, I get overstimulated sometimes. So it's like for me, it's a lot of balancing act to make sure I have that free flow of energy, but at the same time, I'm not too like stimulated to where I'm not focusing. So like I like to watch, and then I also like to be watched, but then I like to be in my space. So it's a lot of balancing act.
You do go wherever the mic goes, but do you notice you're inside the mic booth more than outside of it, or is it?
I'm more inside.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Record sitting down or standing up?
Both. Yo, my nigga, sometimes I get lazy, right? But then I'll realize it, and I'm like, I might can stand up, I might stand up for him, But sometimes when I'm really into my, like, if I really want to just chill and feel it, and I know what vibe the record's going to be, I'll sit down sometimes. And it also depends on how tired my voice is. Like, when I know that I have to give, like, then I'll stand up, and I'm like, fuck this chair. This chair don't need to be here. I'm going to go in full-fledged and hit them notes. So, but just depends on what is being asked. Whatever,
And from start to finish, average length of time you spend on creating a song? With writers or no writers?
5 hours. Average. That's like, I'm just, 'cause sometimes I could be in there for like an hour or two. Minimum 2 hours, but 2.5, but sometimes I could be in there for a minute. It just depends on, like, certain records require you to take your time with them, to be patient with the process, so.
What about writer's block? How do you cope with that?
I get this a lot. I got this as a student, and I got this just in general, like because I'm so caught up in my thoughts, sometimes they just end up, like, you're doing too much. But I think in the studio space, getting up, maybe eating, whatever you gotta do, I might get some entertainment from social media, refresh my brain, maybe call a friend, just kind of get myself on a circular, like, just, because whenever I'm like, you're running, and like, I can't do that. I have to have my energy constantly in motion to feel, to experience, to write, whatever it may be.
Longest you worked on a song, stopped because of writer's block, and ended up finishing another point of time later?
Like, maybe 2 days. Maybe 2 days. At the most, though. It wasn't long.
You're writing, I think you said you write on your phone, yes?
Phone, iPad. I have journals. I like to keep journals with me.
Ever lost lyrics from the journal standpoint or the phone, iPad standpoint before?
No, I hate losing them. It makes me feel weird. I'm just like, did somebody take my shit? Like, you know what I mean? I'm very, like, I keep a close eye on wherever I put my lyrics all the time.
So you've never lost lyrics?
Not really, no. No, mm-mm.
Ever gotten emotional creating a song?
All the time. I am one of the most emotional beings, like, crazy emotional. I love it, though.
To the
It
point...
can be a blessing and a curse.
Explain.
Because I like to feel everything all the time. Sometimes when so much is going on and so many things are coming at you, it can weigh on you. And not necessarily in a bad way, but it can just be heavy. And if I'm not releasing that in music or releasing it through anything else, through any other mediums, it could just become too much, like, So it's just a matter of making sure that I'm always, a big thing for me is balance. that has been a huge life lesson that I'm still learning. It's just balance, making sure that everything that I do keeps that, we're going back and forth.
Ever gotten emotional to the point where you shed a tear creating a song?
Creating, yes, but more so feeling my music and performing is where I get emotional. My emotions are definitely heightened. I remember one time when I was in New York with my A&R, my management team, and Sylvia, and I was basically performing one of the records. And you would have thought that, like, I was worshiping, you know, in church, like something was ministering through me. And I was in complete tears, and it wasn't something that, and it's never something that's forced or being put on. When you really feel and you have mindfulness in music, it's just that's what happens for me. That's the process. That's what it looks like.
But you have teared up creating a song before.
Yeah, but it's not that common.
When it has, do you actually record that? Like sometimes when people do tear up creating a song and they're recording, sometimes they keep the voice cracks. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they keep, maybe they're sobbing and they're recording. Maybe they keep all that. Was that something you did too as well? Or no, it didn't even get to the recording process of you?
I've never, well, when you're talking about crying, no. I've never left that in. I've never had that happen. But as far as feeling emotions and like being really, like the connectivity is so strong to where you hear it, definitely have had that and have chosen to leave it in a record. I actually prefer that version over others, you know.
Because?
You can feel how genuine a record is. So sometimes when you hear what people sometimes with perfect ears call flaws and mistakes in the voice, I see it as the thing that makes the record, you know. So in the times where I've left it in a record, it was meant to be there. I was intentional. I'm very intentional, so I left that in there with purpose.
Did that song almost become too much to finish?
No, I finished that. Quickly actually. Yeah.
Can you share the name of that song?
There's two records actually that I'm thinking about. There's one called Get Lost, and the second one is called Good One.
And they're both available now to listen to if somebody wanted to, or no, not yet?
No, definitely haven't given those gems away just yet.
Are you able to explain, because it's not out yet, I know some artists are touchy about that sort of thing, are you able to at least explain what each song is about, or no?
Well, I usually like to leave this up to experience. First, I want to leave this one up to firsthand experience.
Okay. When it comes to producers, you find them or they reach out to you?
Both. Just like when I think about how Tricky met me. A lot of producers on social media, they'll like always want to send beats. And then some of them work with each other, that like ones that I've reached out to. So it's kind of like just a networking process, really.
It's 50-50?
Yeah, it's 50-50 for sure.
And do you like when a producer cooks something up from scratch, or are you like a folder sifter? Like
50-50.
50-50.
I've been in a session where I've literally watched a producer bring out instruments and do the whole thing like from scratch. You know, like we started off with something that was already pre-made, and then it was just like, he's like, nah, like I just feel like with you gotta have something that's completely raw. And I was like, whatever the vibe is for today, I'm like a very adaptable person. I think that's the word I'm looking for. So it doesn't matter.
Ever passed on a beat
Yep.
and it became a bigger song for somebody else?
Nah. I'm someone who I like to do a lot of records. I'm pretty selfish with that. I'm stingy, so like if I passed on it, my nigga, it was whack. Like, it was whack. But typically, I'm never presented like with, like all the producers that I've ever worked with, they're not whack, so, but I've definitely heard beats where I'm like, oh, that's different, like, oh, I like what you did there. That was cute.
Because sometimes, too, you could hear a beat and be like, wow, this is a nice beat, but it doesn't fit my vibe or energy or mindset, and you put it down and, I guess, quote unquote, pass on it, and then somebody else takes it and it becomes a big song. That can happen also.
No, I mean, I'm very,
wow,
very
this is a good
open-minded.
beat. It sounds great for this other artist, though, probably,
I'm not
but not for me.
Listen, I'm not recommending no other artist for a beat that I was half-ass interested in. Like, how dare I? You know what I mean? How dare you? How dare we? Nah, like I just move on, baby. I just move on.
I want to ask you a few career questions here. Risk versus reward. What's the biggest risk you took for your music career so far?
Sacrificing school as a first-generation student. When I had busted my ass on every level to get in. And when you are a first-gen student, especially as a seen as a black woman in America, in this systematic setup that they've got going on, like, it's tough to explain to my parents that didn't go that, so I'm going to go be a singer. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm going to be a damn good one at it, But the way, the best thing about it, though, because my mom is like 1,000%, like 1,000,000% supportive of my decisions, as long as I'm happy. But initially it came as a shock. It was like, but the what ifs. And I think that's how I knew like I was supposed to be here, because I didn't have a what if. I was just like, I trust my team. I trust them to lead me where I need to be. That doesn't mean they have to be with me forever, but I trust them in this moment. And I'm trusting God, I'm trusting the universe. Let's go. But that was one of the biggest things. And I actually cried when I made the decision, because I came into school as a biochemistry student. So I studied biology and chemistry, and I was on a pre-medicine track. I graduated high school with a 4.0. That was magna cum laude. And then I had like lots of scholarships that I had worked for that summer, just building so that I could support myself in school. And then, I met Tricky, and it was like, I blew up too at the same time. So while I'm in school trying to go from class to class, I'm also a celebrity on campus. And it's, oh, you're on Cardi B's page, and oh, like I saw you with Future and Chris and Alicia and all these different people, and they're like, so you're like really doing things. And I didn't see it as that, but I was like, yeah, there has to be some decisions that need to be made, because I definitely understand that I'd rather be doing something that makes me feel like I'm living, makes me feel like I'm not just existing in some space, but just this was what I was meant to do.
So do you actually, quote unquote, drop out?
No. I had a conversation, I mean, if you want to call it that, if you want to put language to it, sure, but no, because if I put that in my mind, then I'm thinking like, okay, I'm not finishing anything. That's not, I want to finish what I started. However, I just know that with music, there's a momentum that school exists. School always exists. And that was the hardest thing for me because I'm a science person. I'm a logical person. I'm like, okay, well, A plus B equals C. But I was like, well, I had a conversation with the dean of my school and I said, so let's talk, sis, because this is the position I'm in, but at the same time, this is the opportunity, the once in a lifetime opportunity that I have. Like, what do you do? And my dean was like, you literally are close to finishing, but your credits will always be here. She was like, you can stop and pick it up. So really, I took 2 semesters off. So I didn't withdraw from the school, but I took 2 semesters off. So in some form, you can see that as dropping out, but according to my university, like I'm still on track for a degree. I can finish with a degree. I already have an associate's degree that I got in high school. I was just getting a bachelor's, you know what I mean? I was taking it to PhD, PhD, MD, medical degree. That was my intentions. And then the universe said, no, this is where you're supposed to be. So
you have your associates.
I do.
If we quote unquote use the word drop out, would that mean this was your junior year of the bachelor's program?
Yes.
Or
it was my third year.
Okay, your third year.
Yeah, my third year.
And
well, with where I was, my junior year.
And are you able to share what university this was?
It's called the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, UNCG. It's pretty open. It's out there. My fans know where to find me.
How do you have this how does this conversation go with your parents about this decision?
I told my mom and my dad and everybody else, I said to trust me. I use those words very strongly. I'm very selective when I use the words trust me. That means I got it. It's like when I say those words, it means that I've gotten to a point where I'm not questioning anything, but just trust me. And I remember like my mom and I having multiple conversations and she was just like, Kayla, I don't know, like, what if things don't, and of course I feel like as a parent, you always want to be skeptical of what your child gets involved in, especially when you're new and you're young and you don't know all the outcomes that could happen. But I just told her, I was like, trust me, like, I will do everything in my power. If I feel like I haven't fully maximized my potential and the opportunity that I've given, then there's no room for me to be like, okay, you know what I mean? Like if I've done everything that I can with the opportunity, it was a go. But that's not even in the question. Like that's not even up for discussion. Like I'm a breath of fresh air. And that's the best way to say it. Like,
what was the response?
All right. Literally. All right.
And just for chronological purposes, you start this junior year and make this decision after starting it, or this was before you started?
I had already started. I had already started my junior year. And we had made the decision. It was like a collective decision with everybody, my team, my parents, and even Tricky had to explain, like, we've skipped a lot of steps. I'm very, I'm thankful, I'm privileged to say that. There's a lot of steps that we were just blessed to be in the rooms at the right time, to just go in head first, you know what I mean? And it worked out in our favor. And it was just like, it's like one of those things that it's like at this point, you're going up, like you're going to go up. We're all like the blessings, it's going up. And so I just went with it.
How long has it been now since you made that decision, time-wise? Has passed?
A year. Yep. about a year.
Was it,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I contemplated beforehand, and I was like, no. I was like, I can stay in school. I can do these things. Even to the point where I was an online student just to try to keep up. But then whenever I was doing that, it was like, oh, but you have sessions. Like, so say I'm going in, like say I'm in LA, where sessions are typically earlier. Here, they're like at night, you know. And say I go in a session at 11 a.m. I remember going in a session, cutting a record at 10 a.m. We had wrote the record the night before, and it's like, all right, the next morning you gotta be up to record. And it started to, and it kind of weighed on me because I was like, oh wait, so I don't really have time to submit this paper before 11:59. Not with giving 100%. I'm giving like half-ass results. Like I'm just scramming to make sure that I'm telling you why trans feminism is so important. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't something that I was able to fully, like I felt like I was half-assing it. And so if I felt like if I was half-assing school, then I'm obviously not, the energy that I'm giving to that, I'm not giving to music. So one of them has to be priority to me. And the one that made me happiest and the one that made me feel like I was living is what I chose.
Just curious, what was the major you were actually going to go for?
The major? I was a biology major.
Okay.
Yeah, I was a biology pre-med major.
Was it worth it? This
Sacrificing
risk?
or
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I love what I do. It's maturing me too. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just teaching me so much in so little time, and to see where I will be, not even in 10 years, not even in 5, blows my fucking mind because I'm so dedicated.
Proudest accomplishment so far in your music career at this point?
I think one was recent. I just had a show at, it's called A3C. It's a conference and festival, music festival.
In Atlanta?
In Atlanta. The accomplishment more so was being able to step onto the stage, command the attention, feel the high of the energy of the audience in that exchange, and to walk off stage stripped and in that humility that I started with. That was something. It didn't get to me. It was more so like, wow, we're in this experience together, but I have more work to do. I have more to focus on. And I felt like that was a big win for everybody that who had invested, who had touched, just from the rehearsals to the finishing touches, everybody did their part. It was a win.
Single best thing you've done for your career? So this question is more like a tactic, not so much an accomplishment question. Single best thing you've done for your career?
Go to the gym. Yeah, like to sing and dance at the same time is harder than some of my chem labs. I'm not even gonna flex, and it's just hard. So I've recently gotten into boxing. That's one of my new favorite hobbies. And then, as much as I hate it sometimes, but going to the gym kind of made me smile when I'm not out of breath. By the end of going through the show 5-6 times, the slightest things make the difference, you know? So I guess I gotta keep my ass in the gym, you know?
And was that recommended, or you took it upon yourself to do this
Both.
gym thing?
Both, honey, both. Look, you don't know how many times my manager has told me to get in the gym, and I'm like, I'm going. As I sit on the toilet taking a shit. I'm going to the gym. I'm going. You right? I'm walking down the steps. Ooh, I feel the sweat. And then I'm like, oh, I didn't go. And then now I have to suffer because I ain't take my ass to the gym. You know what I mean? Now they like, ooh, you out of breath. Like now they're entitled to talk shit about my rehearsal habits because so it's just a matter of getting up and going and knocking it out, even if it's like 30 minutes,
Biggest failure so far in your music career on the opposite end of the spectrum?
I don't really look at things as failures. I'm definitely a perfectionist, so I'm always like, damn, I could have did this better, but I don't feel like, the only thing that I can remember is like this one time I was performing. More so, it's not really in music, like it's in music, but it's more so on the performance side of things where I had allowed the emotions to get to me in this particular performance. I still did the damn thing, but I allowed myself to be a slave to my emotions in that time rather than owning them and being like, I see you sneaking up on my ass, but I'm still like in for the win. And that was just this one time. But other than that, I've understood through reflecting on that moment that at least I'm failing forward if I'm looking at it as a failure. But really it's just a learning process. All of this is, I've had to understand I need to take a good 10 steps back farther than I really, anticipated because it's genuinely a process.
What type of emotion was this?
Disappointment, humiliation, anger, those three kind of wrapped up into one. I was upset. I was like, I know that everybody else that was watching was like, you are killing it, you are this. But in my perfectionist mindset, I was like, okay, but this happened though, and this happened though, and this happened though. So they couldn't tell because, of course, I'm supposed to stay in character, but I'm pissed. I'm like, it's above me now. Like, it wasn't hitting the way I wanted it to hit.
Are you a prisoner to perfection?
If I choose to be. Depends. If I want to be, I will be. But so far, in the balancing act, I've been trying to practice how to respond instead of react. Do you understand? Yeah.
Respond instead of react. Any more clarification there? If somebody watching doesn't get that.
Responding, being a little bit more consciously aware. Like in a full 360, if somebody's watching, if I'm watching myself, whatever, I'm feeding myself, from not from an outside perspective, but like if I'm outside of myself, to kind of think about how you feel, figure out what the root is, and then let that inform your decision making instead of, damn, that didn't go the way fuck, I'm pissed, you know what I mean? Like, just allowing there a space to breathe, to sit with it, and then to go back to the situation with a different mindset. That's responding. And then reacting, of course, is, baby, it's a whole different energy.
What didn't go perfect in this show that caused these emotions in this downward spiral?
Just the beginning of the show, there's always sound issues. And I wasn't too pressed about the sound. It was more so like, if the record's playing and I'm supposed to be singing, I want to be singing. The record should not be playing and I'm not singing, you know what I mean? So it was just more so like, a little bit more preparation that needed to be required, a little bit more practice too, from just on all angles. It just needed to be a little bit more practice. But I'm learning how to get that recovery speed, if you will. So like learning how to bounce back, learning how to do things at a quicker speed and adapt to any situation. Like the last, when I was mentioning the A3C festival, I had been rehearsing for a month and some change with a headset so I could have free movement with my arms. And then literally a day before the show, my manager's like, oh, so there might be a mic that you gotta hold. And if they don't have that and they have a cord, then you're gonna have to adapt. And so in that moment, I think one of the biggest things too that I didn't get to mention is there was a moment where it hit me and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel the emotions coming and I'm getting stressed. Instead, I took the moment, I grabbed the mic, went back in the rehearsal room and said, well, fuck it, if I'm gonna be a professional, then I gotta act like it. And I need to figure out how to use this mic today, right now. If I got 30 minutes, that's 30 minutes that I won't have tomorrow. So I gotta do it. You know what I mean? I gotta do it for me. Like, I gotta do it, because if this 30 minutes is gonna make me feel more comfortable and prepared, and I still get what I want and I had the headset. You know what I mean? Like, I still gotta know how to be in these situations. So it's just a matter of everything that I'm doing, learning to adapt and learning to be quick on my feet, be quick with my actions, like well thought, but quick. So.
This show that didn't go perfect, where was this particular gig at?
Georgia. Nah, it was in Augusta. It was Augusta. I'm not mad at it. I think there's something interesting about allowing people to see those vulnerable moments.
What venue?
It was at an amphitheater. It was a Summer Nights festival. It was a like festival. Real low key, you know, but it was dope experience.
This may sound like a similar question, but it could be a different question if you look at it. I asked you what your biggest failure so far in your music career was, and you gave us your answer. What do you think your biggest mistake was so far?
The biggest mistake, if any, that I've made so I said failure was referencing to that specific performance. But as far as mistake, I think not being sensitive enough to not only my journey, but those who care about me around me. Because sometimes I'm like, yeah, you know, as artists, you have to understand that even though, and I feel like all artists know this, you have to be humble. And naturally I am humble, but you also have to remember that everybody around you are doing things for you. And it becomes a lot of I, and not so much we. Even though you can work with so many different teams that do different things, it's still all about, well, what does MK want and what is this? So like a lot of people that were watching this process happen, sometimes it would slip in my mind that, oh, you're adapting to this lifestyle too. You're adapting to me being gone for hours and hours and months and weeks at a time in places you've never been, probably will never see. And that's a culture shock. So a lot of the mistake is in how I handled it early on. And like I said, though, I think in all the different relationships that have had, unfortunately, experienced this, we both are still growing in this process together. So, you know, and how to not repeat these mistakes again. But that's really a big one.